Be quiet when the adults are talking. Those words didn't come from a stranger. They came from my own son, spoken sharply, without shame, while he stood in my living room, discussing my house as if I wasn't even there. Before we begin, a huge thank you to all of you. We've officially hit 500 subscribers. It's a small milestone, but a big deal for us. And now our eyes are set on the 1,000 subscribers goal. To help us get there, please hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss a story, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Your support truly encourages us and keeps this channel going. Now, let's jump into the story. My name is Eleanor. I'm 61 years old, a widow, and until that moment, I believed family meant safety, respect, love. That illusion shattered in seconds. Julian had called the night before, saying he needed to talk about my future. His wife, Chloe, insisted on being there too. I should have known then. Nothing good ever comes when people start planning your life for you. They arrived together, sitting side by side on the couch like partners in a business meeting. Chloe smiled politely, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Julian didn't waste time. "Mom, this house is too much for you now," he said. "The maintenance, the stairs. It doesn't make sense anymore." Chloe nodded. "Selling it would be the smartest option. You could move somewhere smaller, easier." I listened quietly, my hands folded in my lap. This house wasn't just walls and furniture. It was where my late husband, Arthur, and I built our life. Where we raised our children. Where I buried my grief after he passed. "I'm not ready to sell," I said calmly. That's when Julian's tone changed. Sharp, cold, annoyed. "Mom, don't be difficult. This isn't really your decision anymore." I tried to speak again, but he cut me off. "Be quiet when the adults are talking." The room went silent. Chloe looked away, hiding her satisfaction. I felt something snap inside me, not sadness, not fear, but clarity. I stood up without another word and walked out into the backyard. The air felt heavier, my chest tight. I sat on the old wooden bench Arthur had built, staring at the house I was about to lose. And that's when I made a choice. I reached into my pocket and made a call I had been putting off for years. As the phone connected, I realized something important. This conversation inside the house was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. I stayed outside longer than I needed to. The voices inside the house were muffled through the glass doors, but I could still hear them, low, urgent, impatient. They were talking about me again. About my life. About what should happen next. I didn't go back in. Instead, I focused on the feel of the bench beneath my hands. The familiar creak of old wood. Arthur had built it years ago, insisting it would outlast us both. At the time, I laughed. Now, I wondered if he knew something I hadn't. My phone was still warm in my palm. The call had been short, almost too short. No questions. No hesitation. Just a calm voice on the other end telling me, "I'll take care of it." That calm scared me more than shouting ever could. When I finally walked back inside, the atmosphere had shifted. Chloe stopped mid-sentence. Julian straightened, his jaw tight, like he'd been waiting for me. "Where did you go?" he asked, irritation barely concealed. "I needed air," I replied. My voice surprised even me. It was steady, detached. Chloe glanced at Julian before speaking. "We were just saying that we should start looking at timelines. The market is good right now." Timelines, markets. Like my home was a stock to be traded. "I said I'm not selling," I repeated. Julian exhaled sharply. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly." That's when it hit me. This wasn't concern. It was control. And they thought they already had it. The doorbell rang. All three of us froze. Julian frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" I shook my head slowly. The doorbell rang again, firmer this time. Chloe's confidence wavered. She stood up first, smoothing her blouse as if preparing for a performance. "I'll get it," she said. She opened the door and her face drained of color. "Is Eleanor Whitmore here?" A man's voice asked, calm and professional. "Yes?" Chloe answered cautiously. "I need to speak with her." Julian looked from Chloe to me, confusion flashing across his face. "Mom?" I walked forward, my heart pounding but my steps unhurried. "That's me." The man handed me a sealed envelope. "This concerns your property. You'll want to read it carefully." I didn't open it. Not yet. Chloe swallowed hard. Julian stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Who is this?" he demanded. I met his eyes for the first time since stepping back inside. "Someone who listens when I speak," I said quietly. As the door closed behind the man, the envelope felt heavier in my hands. I knew whatever was inside would change how this family looked at me forever. I waited until they both sat down before I opened the envelope. I didn't rush. Letting silence stretch had always been my weakness before, but now, it felt like my strength. Julian crossed his arms, impatience written all over his face. Chloe tried to mask her unease, but her fingers tapped nervously against her knee. They were both watching me, measuring every breath I took. Inside the envelope were documents formal, precise, stamped and signed. I scanned the first page slowly. Then the second. My pulse stayed steady. Chloe was the first to speak. "What is it?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Is this about taxes or something?" I looked up. "It's about ownership." Julian leaned forward. "Ownership of what?" I folded the papers neatly and placed them on the table between us. "This house." The room shifted. Not physically, but emotionally. I could feel it, the way people feel pressure change before a storm. Julian scoffed. "Mom, we already talked about this. The house is mine," I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud, but it landed hard. "Fully mine. And protected." Chloe's smile disappeared. "Protected how?" I met her gaze without blinking. "Legally." Neither of them spoke. Julian picked up the papers, scanning them quickly. His forehead creased. He flipped a page, then another, faster now. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "You couldn't have done this already." "I didn't do it already," I said. "I prepared." His head snapped up. "Prepared for what?" "For this exact conversation." Chloe stood up abruptly. "So what you're saying, we can't sell it? That you've locked us out?" I stayed seated. "I'm saying decisions about my life don't happen without me anymore." Julian's voice hardened. "You went behind our backs." I let out a quiet breath. "No." I stopped standing in front of the knife. The words hung in the air. Evan, who had been silent the entire time, finally shifted in his seat. His eyes flicked from Julian to Chloe, then to me. He looked like a man realizing too late that neutrality was no longer an option. "This is ridiculous," Chloe snapped. "After everything we've done for you, you've done for yourselves," I said gently. "I just allowed it." Julian slammed the papers onto the table. "You think this ends it?" I stood, meeting his glare calmly. "I think it begins honesty." No one followed me when I walked toward the hallway. For once, no one told me to stop. But as I closed the bedroom door behind me, I realized something unsettling. The fight wasn't about the house anymore. It was about power. And no one gives that up quietly. I closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, my heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. The house felt different now, not quieter, like the walls themselves were listening. From the other side of the door, voices rose and fell. Julian's frustration was unmistakable. Chloe's tone stayed controlled. But there was an edge to it now, sharp and impatient. Evan said nothing. That silence worried me more than the shouting ever could. I walked to the dresser and sat down slowly, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed older but stronger, less willing to bend. I had known this moment would come one day. I just hadn't expected it to feel so final. A knock landed softly on the door. "Mom," Evan's voice. I hesitated before answering. "Yes." "Can I come in?" I opened the door just enough to let him through. He stepped inside carefully, like a guest instead of a son. He avoided my eyes at first, pacing the small space. "I didn't know," he said quietly, "about the papers. About any of this." I studied him. "But you listened when they spoke for me." His shoulders dropped. "I know. And I hate myself for it." That surprised me. Evan had always chosen the safest path, a quiet one. Seeing guilt written so clearly on his face unsettled me more than Chloe's anger. "They were wrong," he continued. "About forcing you. About deciding things without you." I nodded once. "Yes, they were." Evan swallowed. "Julian's furious. Chloe too. They think you embarrassed them." I let out a dry laugh. "They embarrassed themselves." Evan finally met my eyes. "What happens now?" That question lingered between us. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud would make it real. "Now," I said carefully, "I stop pretending I don't see what's happening." Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Julian's voice followed, sharp and demanding. "Eleanor, open this door." Evan stiffened. "Mom." I raised my hand. "It's fine." I stepped past Evan and opened the door fully. Julian stood there, face flushed, eyes burning. Chloe hovered behind him, arms crossed, already calculating her next move. "This isn't over," Julian said through clenched teeth. I met his stare without flinching. "No," I replied calmly. "It isn't." As I stood there facing them, I understood something clearly. For the first time, this wasn't about reconciliation. It was about who would blink first, and I had already stopped blinking. Julian didn't shout. That worried me more than if he had. His anger settled into something colder, more deliberate. Chloe stepped forward slightly, placing a hand on his arm, not to calm him, but to steady him, like partners resetting their strategy. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Chloe said, her voice smooth. "No one is trying to hurt you." I looked at her hand on Julian's arm. "That's interesting," I replied, "because I feel hurt." Julian let out a sharp laugh. "You always twist things. We were trying to help you, and now you've turned it into a power struggle." "No," I said evenly. "You did." Silence stretched between us. Evan stood off to the side, trapped between loyalty and conscience. I could see the conflict tearing at him, but he still didn't speak. Julian straightened. "Fine, if you want control, take it. But don't expect us to sit around while you make things difficult." "I don't expect anything from you anymore," I said. That landed harder than I intended. Chloe's eyes narrowed. "Then what exactly do you expect?" I paused, not because I didn't know, but because they deserved to hear it slowly. "Respect," I said. "And distance," Julian scoffed. "Distance? This is our family home." "It's my home," I corrected. "And until you remember how to speak to me, your guests." Evan inhaled sharply. Chloe stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You can't mean that," Chloe said. "I do." Julian's jaw tightened. "So you're kicking us out now?" "I'm asking you to leave," I said calmly. "For today?" "For today," he repeated, incredulous. "Yes," I answered. "Today is all I'm discussing." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Julian grabbed his jacket. Chloe followed, her heels sharp against the floor, each step loud with resentment. Evan hesitated, looking at me one last time. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I nodded once. That was all. The door slammed behind them, and the house finally fell silent. Real silence. Not the tense kind, something deeper. Something final. I walked to the window and watched their car pull away. My hands shook not from fear, but from the release of something I'd been holding in for years. My phone buzzed. One message. From an unknown number. "You did the right thing. But be careful. They won't stop here." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Because in that moment, I understood the truth. Standing up for myself had cost me peace. and whatever came next would demand even more. That message stayed on my screen longer than it should have. I read it again and again, trying to decide whether it was a warning or a threat. The number wasn't saved in my phone. No name, no explanation. Just a quiet reminder that I wasn't as alone nor as safe as I wanted to believe. I locked the doors that night. Not out of fear, but out of instinct. The kind that comes when you finally accept that people you love are capable of hurting you. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the house felt louder than usual. Every shadow seemed sharper. I kept replaying the day in my head: Julian's cold stare, Chloe's controlled anger, Evan's silence. I wondered which of them would make the next move. Morning arrived with no answers. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the chair across from me where Arthur used to sit. He would have hated this situation, but he would have hated silence even more. By noon, my phone rang. Evan. I let it ring twice before answering. Yes. Mom, he said quietly. They're angry. Really angry. I assumed as much. He hesitated. Chloe thinks you humiliated them. Julian thinks you've turned against the family. I almost laughed. And what do you think, Evan? There was a pause. I think you finally stopped letting us walk over you. His honesty surprised me. Then why call? Because they're planning something, he said. I don't know what yet, but I've heard enough to know it isn't good. My grip tightened on the phone. Why tell me? Because I should have spoken up sooner, he replied. And because I don't want to be silent anymore. We ended the call without saying much else, but his words settled heavily in my chest. Planning something. That phrase echoed like a ticking clock. That afternoon, I noticed a car parked across the street longer than necessary. When I stepped outside, it drove away. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. I checked the locks again, closed the curtains. For the first time since Arthur died, I felt like a guest in my own home. Another message appeared on my phone. Meet me tomorrow. You deserve to know everything. No name, no location. Just the promise of truth. I stared at the message, knowing one thing for certain: whatever was being hidden from me was finally coming to the surface. And once it did, nothing would stay the same. I didn't reply to the message right away. Whoever sent it knew too much, and that alone made me cautious. Still, the words "you deserve to know everything" wouldn't leave my mind. After years of being spoken over, decided for, and dismissed, the idea of finally knowing the full truth felt impossible to ignore. The next morning, I left the house early. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Evan, not Margaret. I needed this to be on my terms. The cafe was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. I chose a table near the window and waited, my hands wrapped tightly around a warm cup of tea. Every time the door opened, my heart skipped. Then I saw her. It was Chloe's sister, Melissa. She looked nothing like Chloe. No forced smile, no calculated posture. Her eyes met mine, hesitant but determined. Before she walked over, "Thank you for coming," she said softly, taking the seat across from me. "I wasn't sure you would. You said I deserved to know," I replied. "So start talking." She took a breath. "Julian and Chloe didn't just want to sell the house. They've been planning it for over a year." My stomach tightened, but I stayed silent. "They assumed you wouldn't fight back," she continued. "Chloe convinced Julian that once the house was sold, they could manage your finances too, put everything under their control." I felt a cold calm settle over me. "Without telling me?" Melissa nodded. "They already spoke to a broker. Even discussed timing, how to pressure you without it looking obvious." I thought of Julian's words. "This isn't really your decision anymore." Now I understood exactly what he meant. "Why tell me this?" I asked. Her voice wavered. "Because I heard Chloe say something last week that scared me. She said if you didn't cooperate, they'd find another way." The words landed heavily. "What kind of way?" I asked. Melissa shook her head. I don't know. But it didn't sound legal or kind. Silence filled the space between us. Around us, people laughed, cups clinked, life went on. Mine felt suspended. I'm sorry, Melissa added quietly. I should have spoken up sooner. I stood, my legs steady despite the storm inside me. You did the right thing now. As I walked back to my car, one thought repeated in my mind. They hadn't underestimated my resolve. They had underestimated my awareness. But awareness has a price, and as I unlocked my car, I realized knowing the truth meant I could no longer pretend this was just a family disagreement. I drove home slowly, every word Melissa had spoken replaying in my head. The house, my finances, my freedom, none of it had been accidental. It had been planned, carefully, quietly, and for far longer than I ever imagined. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always had, calm, still. But I knew better now. Appearances meant nothing. Inside, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, closing my eyes. I wasn't shaken. I wasn't crying. I felt something far more dangerous. I went straight to the study and opened the old filing cabinet Arthur and I had shared. I pulled out folders I hadn't touched in years, deeds, statements, letters, things I had once trusted others to handle for me. Not anymore. I spent hours reviewing everything, page by page, marking notes, circling names. With every document, my resolve hardened. They thought I was slow, confused, easy to guide. They were wrong. By evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, there was a name. Julian. I stared at the screen, then let it ring out. A second call followed. Then a message. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I almost smiled. Too far for who? I typed one message in return, keeping it simple. I already know. The reply came seconds later. Know what? I didn't answer. Instead, I shut the phone off and walked into the living room. I sat in Arthur's chair, the one everyone avoided, and let the quiet settle around me. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. They had tried to corner me with politeness, then pressure, then fear, and now desperation. I stood and looked around the room, the walls, the windows, the memories. This house had witnessed love, loss, and now, awakening. Whatever move they made next, it wouldn't be in the dark. Because I was done being passive. Done being managed. Done being underestimated. As night fell and the house grew still, one truth settled firmly in my mind: this wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment I finally took control of how it would be told. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.